All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and get the meeting called to order. I'd like to thank everybody for being here for the August Board of Commissioners meeting. Appreciate your attendance. I do, as we get ready to launch into the agenda, just a couple of updates. One, as you pulled in the parking lot has been paved. Those paving contracts were awarded back in early spring. They completed this on Friday. It's probably a decade overdue. There was reaching a point where some of the handicapped parking spots on the front were in very difficult shape. At the same time, that paving contractor was working on the parking lots. Our other contractor has been working on the road paving list. They finished Philadelphia Road, the portion that's in the county. They've also finished Upper Salem and Salem Church Road. Henderson Mountain is currently on hold because we've got a pre-construction meeting later this week with the water pipe contractor that's going to come out to then get the schedule for their water pipe. As soon as we know their schedule, we'll be able to line up the paving to follow that because we've got to let them finish the water portion of that project. So that's paving wise. Rec department, we're going to have an open house. We're going to get that all ready and prepared and announced for September the 18th. I drew a blank because I was about to say the date. So September the 18th, we'll be having an open house over at the rec center, and we'll get that out and get the information out for that. Later this week, this really only applies to commissioners, probably more than, but it's kind of neat to be asked to host. The ACCG, the Association for the State of Georgia, has 2 policy council meetings every year. They do one in South Georgia, one in North Georgia. They're hosting the one in North Georgia at the Tate House on Wednesday and Thursday this week. So we'll have all the commissioners and chairmen from throughout all of North Georgia and some from South Georgia that'll be coming to Pickens County for that particular meeting. It's going to be taking place on Wednesday and Thursday. So we got asked to be the host county. ACCG is the one that's coordinating that entire project, so it's separate from us, but it is going to be hosted here in our county. So just a couple of updates as we get ready to roll in. I know the next item on our agenda is our invocation and prayer. So I'm going to ask Mr. Kirk Anderson if he would lead us in the invocation and following that statement. And Corey, would you let it in your place?
Let us pray. Thank you, Heavenly Father, letting us gather here today, Lord. Please, Lord, watch over these proceedings. Let cool heads prevail. Please, Lord, keep your hands on what we do, Lord. Give us the discernment to make the correct decisions and go in the direction you would have us to. Watch over all of our people out in the field and service in any capacity, protecting and serving the public. Please lead us and guide us as you would have us to go. In that heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So as we go into the approval of the agenda, I do have one move that I would like to propose, and I've got to thank Commissioner Tatum for bringing this to our attention. We do have under the public hearing portion, it's got some lengthy. So our action items, number 9, which is approving the minutes and the one rezone that we have tonight, I'd like to move that in front of the public hearing, so below old business, after item 6 and before item 7.
Yes.
If we move action items, approval of minutes and rezones to that portion, and then we'll follow the rest of the agenda as it's set before us. I'll apologize to everybody that's here that doesn't have the piece of paper in front of them because the screen is going to show it in the order and I'll have to kind of click through. So I apologize that we've got the screen off a little bit. So that way we can get that heard first. Are there any other amendments that? With that, do I have a motion for approval of the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second motion.
Move and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. We will get the agenda rolled. We have no items under our consent agenda. Under old business, there's an announcement for the airport town hall. This is something that was discussed at a couple meetings. We were working on a schedule for having town hall meetings using fire stations throughout the county. So our first one will be specific to the airport. I know a lot of the airport tenants have been invited, and some of the pilots. It's going to be held at Station 11, which is our fire station that sits next to the airport. And that will be this Thursday on the 18th it's at 6:30. So no worries. Oh, this here is at 5:30. That's on the public hearing. I'll get the wrong notice in front of me. So at 6:30, we'll be having a town hall meeting that the board will be there to sit and discuss airport issues and all the different things going on there. With that, we're going to kind of jump around. Like I said, we'll go into action items. The first of the action item is the approval of minutes. We had the minutes from the Monday, July 21st board meeting. I know those were distributed to the board prior tonight, so you would have a chance to review those. And if you have, hopefully if you've been able to go through and review those, do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Any discussion or question? None, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda would be our rezones. We did have one rezone. It is a request for a conditional use for an event space. It's for the parcel. This is where you can tell I always cheat and use what I have on my screen. It's a 30.61 acre parcel 002-001-007 for Mr. Charles Hotink. The location is off Inland Drive in Jasper. The intended purpose of the request, if approved, was to allow small events. Public hearing was held on July the 14th before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission voted 5 yes, 0 no to recommend the approval of the conditional use following the staff recommendation for approval as well. With that, do I have a motion from the floor on this particular rezone request?
I make a motion to approve with the conditions there. The planning commission summary.
Second the motion?
All right, so we have a move and a second. The conditions that the Planning Commission did send over is that the applicant must cooperate with the staff to ensure compliance with safety protocols, parking requirements, other applicable regulations. Attendance will be limited. The maximum capacity is determined by the fire marshal, and amplified sound with events must cease by 10 p.m. Those were the conditions, just for those that didn't have a chance to hear. So we have a move and a second. Any other discussion or question?
No.
None, all in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, that motion carries. Now we'll move on with our public hearing portion of the agenda. We did advertise public hearing. We advertised for 3 weeks on 2 sections, Chapter 67 and Chapter 38. The reason for both of those is they both do have zoning references in those 2 ordinances. So to be consistent and actually to exceed what the state law requires, we did provide three notices of advertisement in the Pickens progress for those. We do have a couple of additional ordinances that we're going to go through for the public hearing portion. I'm just going to breeze by that on the screen so that you can see which chapters. One is a new chapter, 21, that's fire prevention and protection. Chapter 67, as I referenced before, deals with land use intensity districts and map. Chapter 38 is the land development standards. Within that, there's the article on general administration enforcement, subdivisions, access standards, soil and erosion, sediment pollution control, commercial development standards, and updating the glossary terms. Chapter 54 is roads and bridges. Chapter 1 is the general provisions for administration and enforcement. Chapter 2 is the administration, which is the Pickens Planning Commission of Article 3, authorities, boards, and commissions. So to go through the public hearing and to present the material so that we can understand what is being proposed for any changes, Bill Wood, our Director of External Operations, is going to go through and make a presentation. We will actually, as we go through the public hearing, there will be a public comments portion following each chapter. So instead of waiting until the end, we will have a break in the slides that you'll see at the end of each chapter so that if anybody has public comments, we'll go through those individually. We'll go ahead and kick off the public hearing.
First, Pickens County Board of Commissioners requests that ordinance amendments for consideration for the second week, August 18, 2025. So the overview of the public hearings, that's a very short piece before we get to each individual public hearings. Chris went through the order of consideration already. All of this is about, and the board's mission and our existence here as staff, protect and preserve the public safety, health, and quality of life, and everything we're doing here tonight in terms of adopting new things and enhancing things as it is in that context. The scope of authority here of what we're dealing with is unincorporated Pickens County. What we do here and the things that will be enacted have no application to the city of Jasper, to the city of Nelson, or the town of Colorado. When we made the last set, or the board made the last set of amendments into chapter 38, 37, the stepping stone to tonight would basically took up land uses, land use districts, land use permissibility, subdivision, sewer, and multi-unit dwellings. There were some targeted items, but they're consequential items, even though that they're targeted. A lot of this has to do, not everything, but a lot of this has to do with trying to manage high density, high building density, high population density, basically the struggle between overly built up areas and desirable growth. Tonight, it is still about those 5 things, but it's also about fire protection, roads, bridges, land development, and commercial development as well. And then there's the compliance aspect to it. There's substantive changes that are occurring with this if the board adopts it. There are also clarifications. There are updates to bring it to things modern. There are gaps that are closed in there. Things just weren't addressed. And then there's a reorganization, reconfiguration of things. Now we'll start with the public hearings. First one, new chapter 1, fire prevention and protection. Basically, what the main thing that this ordinance will do is adopt fire code and safety standards. Those that will be adopted for application are the state minimum fire standards, the Georgia Life Safety Code, the International Fire Code, appendices B, C, and D in particular, the standards and requirements for construction and alteration of buildings and other structures that's fire-related, and the ADA standards for accessible design. All of these basically are being incorporated and adopted. When there is a overlapping standard, the strictest standard will apply. Also, there are specific provisions in there with regard to outdoor open burnings, fireworks, illegal power usage, blasting, audits, and emergency access requirements.
So I know the board has been reviewing and working with staff as to going through those. If you want to open it up in case anybody from the public has questions specific to those standards, really we're trying to formally adopt to where we're following the latest of the standards that are set in the International Fire Code and by the state of Georgia as well. We're not trying to intensify. I know that there's sometimes you'll see an area that the state standard says 10,000 square feet or 12,000 square feet is the minimum before sprinkling, and some, whether it be cities or counties, adopt a standard that's more strict than that, and we're sticking with what the state standard is. We're not trying to increase the burden, but we're also trying to make sure that we have the safe fire standards that are adopted by ours, that we're not relying just on the state officials that are in place. So with that, I'll open it up if anybody has public comments. Any board comments? Yes, sir.
I have a question just for clarification. Illegal power usage, is that theft of power or unsafe, dangerous power? I don't know what the definition would be there.
So from it's a theft in terms of it's a crime to be able to get through you. From a fire marshal standpoint, it's also a safety issue that can be created. But if someone goes and hacks into their box, we're just trying to put those standards of referencing that kind of thing. Absolutely. Any other public comments? Any other board comments, questions? All right, we'll move on to the next chapter.
This is the, well, Mr. Orland, you host. Our
Like set the expectation.
Well, some people here were here before, you were here before, if anybody here was before. Basically, there's probably 20 times the amount of material to cover with the same allotted time. So I'll try to get through this. Thanks. So land use
Just see, I
regulation.
want to see, this is the full ordinance with the strike through of the existing ones.
So basically, the approach here is it is almost everywhere. There's a land use district element. There's listed land uses that occur within the land use districts. There's land use permissibility, what you can, can't do. And then to supplement all that, there are dimensional requirements, use standards, definitions, and procedures. And that's the setup that we adhere to here. Again, very standard. The old existing section had 15 sections and one appendix. there were 76, I'll use the term component sections. The new one that Chris just held up has 7 articles, 23 divisions, and 128 sections. We had to add a lot here from the substantive standpoint, and a lot of clarification as well. So there's Article 1, which is in general, Article 2, which is the official map of land use districts in the unincorporated area, Article 3, land uses and land use regulation standards, variances in Article 4, Article 5, administration of the chapter, Article 6, zoning decisions impacting land use in unincorporated Pickens County, Article 7, glossary of terms. So all of these articles cover pieces, some more than one, of the model that we talked about in terms of the approach. The map we'll start with. There's the official map as it stands, at least a couple of months ago, before it has to be adopted periodically in terms of updated this picture. There are 18,865 land use districts in unincorporated Pickens County. And basically the way that model works is we have a land use table, and then there in the black, like AG stands for agricultural, SA stands for small agriculture. You see the land use districts that are there in black. Then there's a listed land use. Let's say it's a residential home. That's not what this one is, but that's an example of a use, and we'll have an actual example here before long, and you can see the S's and the X's and the P's of the approved master plan for the SRPC and SBC, the planned communities. And that's basically the setup and how it works. So the heart of what we're doing has been before, but it's a lot more, it's a lot larger, more specific table now. It's table 6-1 in our ordinances. The substantive changes is talking about is in the land use districts. The land use is land use permissibility, variances, amendments. Be impossible to cover them all tonight, so we're only going to hit some of them as examples. There are 11 land use districts that are active, and 2 that are they're not for future expansion. I'll get into that in a minute. So if this is passed tonight, the suburban residential land use district will be eliminated for future expansion. It'll be there if someone already has it for development, but it'll be eliminated for future expansion. We're adding a rural business district and adding an institutional district. The rural business district is intended for smaller, sort of quasi-home-based businesses that don't quite meet the home-based business exception. But the term is very descriptive in terms of what we intend, rural business. Institutional land use district is for churches, government buildings, schools, things like that. Right now, these types of structures and uses are just sprinkled across all kinds of districts, and we want to try to encourage all of those types of organizations to move to that so that we can have a true district for churches and the like. We're going to retain agricultural, small agricultural, state residential, neighborhood commercial, highway business, industrial SPC and SRPC, which is again the planned communities. SRPC being Big Canoe and Tree. Of these land use districts, no parcel can occupy multiple land use districts, and the elimination of suburban residential. What this means is discontinued for future expansion. This eliminates the 1 acre minimum lot size for future expansion. It leaves a minimum lot size of 1.5 acres in the rural residential land use district. And on May the 21st, in the prior adoption of the board, the urban residential was eliminated with a 3/4 of an acre minimum lot size. So the 3/4 of an acre minimum lot size went away for future expansion on May 21st. If this is passed tonight, the 1 acre minimum lot size will go away, and then the minimum lot size for minimum residential in the unincorporated area will be 1.5 acres. No parcel can occupy multiple land use districts. this is the existing correct treatment. We're putting it in basically specifically so that the application is clear and there's no going from A to B to C to basically make the point to complete the application. Hypothetical example, you got one parcel that may have 3 designations on it: agricultural, rural residential, and highway business. There's, say, an example of 190 acres. Multiple land uses really shouldn't be there. Those are 3 very different things. So what's it going to be when the development comes around and people start developing it? So you got minimum lot sizes going on of densities of 10, 1.5, and 0.25. Primary uses are different. And basically, this is one of the things that we're bringing out that's to deal with it directly as opposed to indirectly. Land use. This is basically purpose and/or process of what is being conducted in the land use districts. We had 126 before May 21st. May 21st, it went to 134. We're going to 220. It basically just gets a lot more specific on some general land uses because we want to avoid what's going on as much as possible in the 4th star, which is unlisted land uses, which is kind of an arduous process of trying to determine the treatment of something. There will always be unlisted land uses because even in places that may have, let's say, 500 designated listed uses, because folks are always coming up with something that's new and different. And that's not inherently bad. It's just the fact of life. So we're just going to try to basically know what we're doing, save applicants' time, save ourselves time, save citizens' time. And then the unlisted land uses, as I said, they're still going to be there. We have, in this particular version before the board, we have added a lot of specificity on how to deal with these. There are principal land uses, accessory land uses, and temporary land uses. We've basically embellished our descriptions and content with regard to principal and accessory land uses, and we've created something new for temporary land uses which did not exist. And then there's basically the notion of non-conforming land uses. Non-conforming land uses are things that land uses that just don't comply. Now they may not comply because the use existed before the law was adopted or amended. They may not comply because the use was created after the law was adopted or amended. And so this usually covers building, lots, and uses. So our ordinance refers to basically non-conforming buildings, non-conforming lots, and non-conforming uses. So on the ones that existed before a law was adopted or amended, we're calling them grandfathered non-conforming land uses. Use existed before the law was adopted or amended. It is permissible, but the burden of proof is on the owner to show that the use actually existed before the law was adopted or amended. That's not unique to Pickens County. That's a standard across the state in terms of that burden of proof. And that can be relinquished if certain things aren't done. Non-grandfathered, the use was established, started after the law was adopted or amended. It is prohibited. However, it can be cured. Basically, it can be changed to a conforming use. There can be a reclassification of the land use district that it's in, and there can be a variance. Land use permissibility. Permissible land uses, especially permitted land uses and prohibited land uses. At permissible use, you basically do it. It's transferable. Especially permitted land use requires a special use permit from the Board of Commissioners. It would be non-transferable. Here's an example. Last time I used funeral homes, I got a reaction. So we're using pet stores tonight. And this is the actual example in the new table. Pet store is a new listed land use. It wasn't there before. It's just a type of retail establishment. It's a good example because we're trying to take like commercial retail establishments, and I forget the number, we may have 30 or 40 different ones now. We try to get a little bit more circumspect in the treatment. So you can see pet stores in terms of where They're prohibited where it's a permissible use and where a special permit is required. That is a live example of it. Variances typically concern dimensional requirements, like lot coverage, distances between buildings, setbacks. This is not about land use permissibility, it's about the dimensions around the land use. The reason I've actually even included this in here is we have a lot of different things that happen in terms of folks walking into the building, wanting to understandably get some relief on something that's actually a land use, and that has to come before these guys in the planning commission. If it's about a dimension, then we can handle it a different way. The existing ordinance basically just talks about the variances in general. The proposed ordinance breaks the variances into two parts: administrative variances, non-administrative variances. Non-administrative variances and administrative variances are treated differently. The non-administrative variance is submitted to planning and development and then goes to the Board of Appeals and appeals to the Superior Court if there's an adverse outcome. The other one, administrative, just goes basically to the Board of Appeals and then it's appealed to the Superior Court. And again, not the Planning Commission or commissioners involved in that. Then there's the amendments to the chapter itself. These are called zoning decisions of state law, which regulates all of this, and inclusive of amendments to the official land use map. So zoning decisions, amendments to the official map, and other zoning decisions that we've broken it down here. So a little bit of oversimplification, but basically it's trying to get the notion of the concept across. So the land use district reclassifications, which is rezoning, and special use permits, is usually originated by an applicant. It goes to the planning commission, and then it goes to the VOC. Other zoning decisions, adoption or repeal of a chapter outright, or what we're doing tonight, falls under the context of amended text, and that basically is a matter of the VOC. The closing point on this is the VOC can originate any zoning decision, and only the VOC can make the zoning decision.
All right, so there's a lot of meat as we open up public comments on this one. So I will open up the door. Any public comments? Yes, sir.
What, give an example, what was it, urban or rural business? Give me an example.
Hair salon, like a home-based hair salon. Right now, technically, if you look under the current ordinance, they're prohibited, but we all know that they exist in pretty much every neighborhood that's there. We're creating a category that provides that to where it's got the limitations as to what kind of traffic can come in and out, so that it's not designed to be a storefront, but it could be a home-based business. That hair salon is the easiest example, but there are several that are like that somebody may stop by to pick up something. But that's the reason for the creation of that.
I'll throw an example of a home-based business at you on rural business. She's a photographer, and right now she has clients come to our house, and she takes pictures upstairs in a loft.
Right.
And birthday pictures, smash cakes, all this. It was a great idea until she started getting really busy, and now we've got people coming in our house we don't know. And it's kind of uncomfortable. We've got two parcels out on the west end. One's 6 acres, one's 7. I inquired about a year ago about opening, building a little barn for her to do her pictures. And I was told that might be viewed as a venue. And in order to do that, I have to have 10 acres agricultural. Well, I've got 6, and it's rural residential. I can't add it with my other piece of property the house is on. So now what we're hoping is rural business goes through, we can build like a 1,200 square foot barn where she can get her clients to come in and take pictures and not come into our house. And that's kind of what we're hoping this would have accomplished by doing that.
Yeah, that's another example.
Yeah.
It's that some of the ones with rural business that were built in subdivisions, the reason I brought up the hair salon there, the hairdresser, is if you lived in a subdivision that was all a rural residential subdivision, you can't get highway business zoning in that category. Rural business would create an option. It would also work in the other districts as well. So I'm looking at the authors, they can chime in.
Yeah, just that what I'm about to say didn't make the presentation cut, but since there have been comments, just want to add that if this passes, one of the clauses in the law would basically make this an accelerated, cost-free process to move to rural business. We're that serious about having this take root from a
To
policy
simplify that rezone process
Right.
is to be able to get it before the Board of Commissioners without expensing a lot of extra time. We do have certain requirements. You have to advertise it, you have to do the different things.
Right.
But we can fast track it to come to the BOC, kind of like we do with downzoning now, to get it in next. That's awesome. Yes, sir.
What would be the difference in the rural business is highway business? Can you give me an example of where we would separate the two?
Do you want to go ahead and chime on?
Yeah,
They're defined very specifically as to what businesses, and then within the land use chart, it shows which
It'll
ones
show
are
us
permissible versus which ones are not
I
permissible.
think sometimes, on occasion, there'd be overlap there. You could have a certain type of business that literally could be in highway business, rural business, and even neighborhood commercial. But there are differences in terms of the minimum lot size and items like that. The minimum lot size for highway business is very small, but we're keeping rural business more along the lines of residential space to maintain that rural character. And we want these things to be very distinguishable. And we want the experience of going to them to be very different from the standpoint of the customers and also the proprietors. Just one quick expansion on what Chris said. There are a lot of situations here that are grandfathered. We've talked about the grandfather non-conforming uses that are grandfathered, where a person will have a business that's running out of the home, but there'll be things that make it visible from the road that those businesses are being run. Now, technically, that can't be done. However, a lot of those existed and then were passed on before the ordinance took effect. So we want for that type of situation to have a home, so to speak, in an unincorporated, where you can have a business that looks a lot like a home, except you can't have a sign. And you can't have things that can be visible externally, all that.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm specifically concerned about the seeing an overlay of the FEMA special flood zone on top of the map that he's discussing. How does that factor in to your zoning? Because all agricultural, for instance, all agricultural designations are not equal. It could be agricultural on the east side of the county where it's more mountainous versus agricultural on the west side of the county where it's flat. And so if you zone something, say from agricultural to residential, in the east side of the county where there are a lot of mountains and someone's in a special flood zone and we have upper stream, development, how are those people in that flood zone protected versus people who go from agriculture to residential on the west side and maybe that's flat territory and, perhaps there's a flood zone, but sometimes insurance-wise, a person could live on a high knoll and honestly, they're not at higher risk for a flood coming through. But, you know our special situation, and I understand that you've just approved yet another rezoning for another special floodplain with the winery near the Long Swamp Church Road. And it's, lo and behold, they're also in a floodplain, and the people downstream from them are as well. So I'm just wondering, how does that get factored into your land use map? I was told by Christine Walkie of the EPD and an email, she told me there was the special flood zone is specifically designated just for insurance. But then when I read the link that she sent to me, it said that the mapping process helps you and your community understand your flood risk and make more informed decisions about how to reduce and manage your risk. So I don't know if that's your risk, the county's risk, or if that's the risk that the property owners take on by, having people develop up above them. So I'm just wondering how that works out.
So the FEMA flood zone, in our research, that the intent of that is for us to not allow building to occur in a FEMA flood zone so that they don't get flooded out. Now, obviously, your situation, the house was built in the 1800s, long before FEMA flood zones ever became a thing or whatever may have changed. So the intent and what she's saying as far as for the insurance purposes is for us not to allow and issue building permits for anything to be built within those FEMA flood zones. That's the side of why those exist, is for us not to allow the construction to occur inside that flood area, that mapped flood area. So the intent is on that side of it. So it doesn't really affect all of the neighboring parcels per se. It is something that has to be factored in whenever you take a look at it. The conditional use that was granted for tonight is an existing structure. They just want to be able to have a fence at something that's already been built. We're not permitting them to build more. We're allowing them to use it for more events on what's there.
Well,
was actually voted on.
The main thing is I wanted to know, is that being considered when you're considering your overall land use map, are those existing property owners who are downstream sitting in the basin of a special flood zone, are they being considered when we're saying that we can, rezone?
That's the whole public hearing process to determine the impact and well, I know there's the latest one trying to add whatever additional conditions to prevent on that particular one in a unique situation that was there. Yes, ma'am.
But in his description, I heard no discussion about the topography. And, we are the first mountain city. And there is a variance in the terrain and stuff. And would you let people go in, kind of unrestricted, timber companies go in and remove trees for subdivisions? The thing that I've learned through all of this is that a mature oak tree, one, can take up to 150 gallons of water per day. So when you go in and allow people to zone an area with the topography, you have forever changed the land for everyone.
Yeah.
And the thing that I will note is, if you look at Pickens County and you also compare it to the hill country of Texas, where they had the flooding there, if you compare our topography to western North Carolina, we have very similar topographies. So the thing that I would like to see from the zoning standpoint is, are you taking those things into consideration? And are we setting up an environment where the 100-year flood floods out people who have been here all their lives?
You want to tackle one?
The topography is a characteristic of the land that's being considered for the use. So that comes into play when you're going to consider a special use permit, if it's as designated, or if you're moving from one classification to another. That's one of the things you're going to be looking at. Now, when there's already a permissibility for the listed land use in the land use district, that's a little bit more problematic to deal with, because you've got vested rights and vested interests that are already there. And so it's tricky to deal with. But yeah, so generally we wouldn't go with anybody in here and start basically infringing upon the property rights that you've got on something that's already classified, for an appropriate use. We also have the flood prevention chapter that's not a subject of what you're looking at tonight, but that also plays around with this. And that's got its own set of procedures, and that basically gets brought into play when we have various applications that come in, whether it be for reclassification or for subdivision application on the administrative side. So some tools are there. This is really not an excuse. back when this was originally adopted, Chapter 67 in 2005, there wasn't what people call zoning here. There wasn't any of this stuff. So what happened is at that time, folks were just allowed to choose whatever they wanted for their designation. And we got some weird stuff on that map that I flashed in terms of those choices. So we got to maneuver through all of this to make it work. The existing land uses, the vested rights issues, the tools we have to use. And I think from a staff standpoint, if we're given these enhanced tools to use, I mean, we'll work as hard as we can to basically apply the law. We're going to talk about the application of the law at the very end of this. But that's.
When you have the mountain protection zone, that anything above the elevation of
22.
requires a 10-acre parcel before anything can be put in underneath. So it's you can't go subdivide that out. The problem, like you're saying, and what you're talking about, is an agricultural designation. Once it's deemed as agricultural, they're allowed to go in and do a lot more clearing than they can in any other zone, and most of those forest lands are deemed agricultural. What we're trying to do as we get into the flood side of it, when we finish this round of ordinances, as we go into the next round of review, is to try to come up with how we can put more guardrails in beyond what the EPD standards say in terms of the definition. It has to be land that's being used for an agricultural purpose versus just a zoned agricultural zone designation route. And so that's for the next wave of what we get through on, you get that. I think you've hit your hand up.
Well, I was just trying, maybe this would help. If you're going from a pervious surface to impervious surface with streets and rooftops and stuff upstream, during that design process, if you're gonna go to maybe say 1.5 acre subdivision, wouldn't the engineer check all the runoff to make sure that the detention ponds and retention?
Subdivisions, yes. In individual land lots that you're disturbing less than an acre, there's not a requirement for that all the way through. So if you're just building a single home and it's a 1 acre home, then, or 1.5 acre, but you're clearing less than 1 acre, then the rules of what all is required, the engineer has to be involved when you're building multiple homes and building subdivisions. So you're right, whenever it's multiple homes that are going in. The issue they've had where they're at, and we've become very familiar with it.
Yes.
And it's one that's partially addressed in the future. It's not completely eliminated. If you own a large tract of land, you have the ability to split your land each year. You can take and sub-parcel it out every 12 months. Right now, you can take and divide. So one large tract of land, a year later became 2 tracts of land, a year later became 3 tracts of land.
And then
It cut to 4, if I'm not mistaken.
We take out trees and we take.
One of the things we're trying to address is to reduce that amount of time, and that's going to be in the next chapter when he goes through to where it's a 2 acre wait before you can do a split. You still have to create an ability for people to have the ability to split, but we're trying to, if you're going to build a subdivision, you go ahead and be upfront and honest with us up front. We want to build a subdivision, and here's the number of homes, and you've got to go through the process, which those standards are going to change in the next chapter as well. But that's what ended up happening is it was single splits, which was then just a single family, and then the next split caused another. And so it's over the course of a 3-4 year span, it became 3-4 lots that they got put in.
I would like to see something in your zoning to address the loophole family compound. That's specific.
When we get to the next chapter, he's going to discuss. Now, there is family compound, but it requires some different, you have to be able to meet the
I
zoning
understand that.
specifications.
So you made a very good point about impervious versus pervious surfaces. When you go do the family compound and you start paving, you really skirted the rules of having to use an engineer to design how the water runs.
And that's that one lot per year where they keep expanding so it becomes, and that's one of the things we're trying to address in the way that we don't completely get to eliminate it, because as a property owner, there's if your son wants 10 acres of your property, you should have the ability for your son to take 10 acres of your property. We're just trying to keep this from being used as a loophole. Are people going to find their way to try to maximize what they can get from it still? Yes. Are we trying to reduce the amount that can happen? Yes.
Well, if you're reducing the suburban residential, that's gonna help some.
Yeah, that takes away.
That's gonna take away some of the.
there any other comments on this subject?
Oh, quick question on the nonconformities. Is this something y'all are actively going to go after and attempt to cure?
Yes.
Oh.
Slowly. So we're gonna pick different zones on the ones that are non-conforming. Now that there's different categories that can become conforming, we're gonna start attempting to go through and addressing, working on board-initiated land use intensity district changes. It won't be overnight, and if you look at the map, there's, out of that 1,800, I would say there's probably 400 to 500 of non-conforming land uses that are there, or they're multiple in different categories. You've got some that were urban residential that require sewer and other things in Ludlow. There's no way that there's ever going to be. So trying to go and cure those one at a time is not going to be a very fast process, but we're going to start initiating the process one category at a time. They were researching how many we have in each category so that we can start tackling one category after another. So the timberland is not under an ag designation until they clear the timber, and then they turn around and try to use it for residential because it was on suburban residential, but it's been timber property the entire time. We know those loopholes have been there since the beginning. We're just trying to tackle which ones are going to have the greatest impact over the most people and then work our way down from that. But they've got to have the tools as staff to do it. That's one of the reasons for these revisions to the ordinance. So some apply here in chapter 67, some apply in the next chapter in chapter 38 that we're about to go into. So they both kind of work hand in hand off of each other.
Thanks.
Any other comments? We don't move on pretty soon. We're going to be here about all the time. Which we're okay with. I just want to make sure everybody else understands each of them. All right, if we have no others on this section, we'll move on to chapter 38, which will probably get into dovetailing off of what some of the things that we've just gone through on 67.
Chapter 67 is land use standards. Chapter 38 is land development standards. So there's 12 articles in there. I'm not going to go through all of these because of the time, but you can see, folks, that we're just having the discussion. You have the flood damage prevention article in the land development. It's pretty strong right now, which is why we've left it alone. But it has to be applied proactively to situations that come up, each time that we see them when they walk in. The proposal in front of the board amends 6 of these articles. It does not amend at this time another 6 of the articles. The ones that are being amended are general administration enforcement, subdivisions, we're reserving Article 6. What was there was access to public roads. We've moved that, as you'll see a little bit later, to Chapter 54, roads and bridges. Then soil erosion, sedimentation, and pollution control, commercial development standards, and then the glossary of terms that's been created at the back end. Article 10, soil erosion, sedimentation, and pollution control. You don't have a frame on that. I just don't want to mention that. This was enacted originally in 2010. It as it exists, mostly allows us to do what we need to do on this. However, there was a new model ordinance that was created by the state that took effect in 2016. So what we're really doing here is taking what it was in 2010, proposing that they go to the 2016 most current version. General administration enforcement, what you have to do with plats, a subdivision that create subdivision. Chris mentioned it a little bit earlier. All plats must be submitted to planning and development for approval. The chairperson in planning and development have sole authority to approve plats for recordation by the clerk. Approval by any other party is prohibited, and no plats entitled to be recorded absent compliance with all of these. It's pretty standard stuff across the state. We just didn't have it this specific in the existing one when it was drafted back when. It's just what Chris was talking about, and he described it very well. The 12 months that he described is becoming 24 months in terms of the freeze period on this. There are 36-month freeze periods out there in other counties, but we decided to go from 12 to 24 for now to see how much that helps us with this without going to the 36. And it can make it, basically what it does, and it comes into play, is when it transforms. Under our approach now, on the land development side, a division of one parcel into 2 lots does not have to be approved pursuant to the minor subdivision approval process. However, if there are subsequent transfers within this 24-month period, that will throw it into, per the first star, that'll throw it into the minor subdivision approval process. Then, if there's a minor subdivision and you have subsequent transactions that throw it into a major subdivision, then it has to come back and go through the major subdivision approval process, even if it already approved as a minor subdivision process. It gives us tools to basically be able to have closer looks at these situations. And back on May the 21st, we did something new, and it's new, and that is we actually made the subdivisions and subdivision process a land use, a listed land use. So not only does it have to go through land development processes, it has to go through land use processes too, because they weren't involved in subdivisions before because of what the laws were. Now they are. Getting in and out of subdivisions, basically this comes up a lot, and I would say that usually it's not a problem, but we have seen some problems where it comes up, and I want everybody to see the key word here is may. Planning and development may require subdivision of phase 50 or more primary structures to have 2 means of ingress and egress. That's a may. We don't expect this to happen a lot at all, but it just provides the discretion there. It is not a shall. Bridges have to weigh 75,000 pounds or more in a subdivision. That's to support a fire engine. Very important standard. In terms of the streets, streets are private streets until the VOC takes discretionary action to put them into the public, into the county road system. It's a 2-year wait before that can happen. Half streets are now not allowed. Split lane streets are now not allowed. One-way streets require affirmative approval. They're not prohibited. They just require affirmative approval. This is really safety driven. It's all about safety. You folks basically being able to maneuver and get out if you have to, and then fire apparatus and law enforcement vehicles being able to get in safely and very quickly. Cul-de-sacs, they're required subdivisions in lieu of permanent dead-end streets. Again, it's a safety driven, and islands and cul-de-sacs are not allowed. This is basically the minimum street requirements that are put into this particular proposal that they have. We can distribute this if anybody wants it. I'm not basically going to go through all this, but this is all very, very, very important standards. And again, it's safety driven heavily. There's a utility placement chart that is in the proposal. This is the most recent one that has been developed in conjunction with the utilities and a lot of service providers out there. It's applied, and basically it's applied as a matter of law because of the inclusion into this ordinance.
Alright, so let's get into that chapter. I know we discussed several of these topics during the previous chapter during the public comments part, but we'll open it up for any public comments on this particular. I always feel kind of guilty because it seems like staff always sits on this side and the public sits on this side, so I feel like I don't ever look to the other side of the room. But yes.
Okay, what your comment, and I'm not quite sure how you would catch this loophole, but back to the family compound, this waiting period of 2 years. Let's say I buy 100 acres that same day on closing, I subdivide. Are you going to catch that?
If you subdivide it at the time of purchase,
I close on my 100 acres at 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I subdivide. How, you're not going to catch
it's
that.
2 separate transactions that would have to come through. So
This is a plat.
yeah, the plat would have to be divided. So that plat division approval would be what would do it. Because either you've subdivided it and you were the one that split it into two parcels,
Right.
or whoever you were buying it from split it and sold it to you
I
in two
see,
separate parcels. So,
I bought the 100 acres.
yeah, it would still require a plat. You'd have to split the plat. So during that plat process, which is where we were talking about the approval of the plats that would require that, the plat would catch that.
Okay,
So,
all right.
good question. I got stuff and thinking through for a second.
Yeah, I was fixing to say the guy that you're buying it from needs to go ahead and split it.
Yeah. If it was split by the person.
Is it by
that sold
person or
it
by-
two separate tracts, then but it
She
would
doesn't
then be a
get credit.
transaction.
She
But
doesn't
then
get
if they were eligible, they could. If they
Well,
weren't
I
eligible, they
mean,
couldn't.
I
So.
just always pride myself on breaking the loopholes.
Well, I mean, we've got a whole lot of people that are loophole searchers. So yeah.
One thing that somewhat mitigates this is this freeze period follows the plat, not the individual people that are dealing with the site.
Understood. Good point. Good point.
Any other public comments on this section? Let's move on to roads and bridges.
Getting shorter as we go. Basically, what we're doing here is making a sharp distinction between public roads and private roads in this. We've moved and strengthened the access requirements onto public roads that I mentioned before, codifying the road standards, codifying the bridge standards, add administration provisions, and added legal statute provisions. Basically, Chapter 54 was, I don't know, maybe 10 pages in total, if that. Most of it was about timber harvesting. So, I mean, we had to add a lot. And then basically public road versus a private road. Our count right now, we got more than 500 public roads in the county, more than 900 private roads.
Yeah.
I would have lost money on both of these, but that's what it is. We got basically, as we had street requirements for subdivisions, we had road requirements for the roads outside of subdivisions. That's it.
So one other thing that wasn't mentioned there, and I know that it was included, is where the encroachments are coming into public roads. Right now, there's gravel hitting straight into an asphalt, and you get a quarter inch of rain, and all the gravel's in the asphalt. There's a requirement now to go beyond the right-of-way, has to be either asphalt or concrete. And if you want to come in and get an access encroachment to get a driveway, you're going to have to make sure that all of that's not washing out into the public road. So one of the additional requirements that was included in the draft of what's being considered tonight does include for that access process to where we make sure we're not seeing all of this get destroyed every time we approve a road.
One technical question on the actual road width, if it's gonna be a county road. I noticed 26 feet. Did it used to be 24?
Yes. Depending on whether it had, fire hydrants or not. If it had fire hydrants, it was 26. And the idea is we set it all to 26 to where, if county water does come in there at a later point, you've already got the width that's required. So nothing has to be changed and, everybody's kind of thinking from the same trunk with.
Yeah, the roads that are out there right now in terms of the public roads, they come in all varieties. It's very, very old roads out there. Where this is going to come to play the most is when people are asking the county to take a private road and make it part of the public system. And this is really about setting minimum standards for that.
Yeah.
So will we enforce timber roads being converted to actual driveways? Will we enforce that little tidbit where the
Yes.
person actually has to build a driveway? and not a
That
timber
way
road?
it's not just automatically becoming a quote road where it was just a forest road.
Yeah, what about that? Yeah, we.
Yeah, it's stretched. Yeah, back that way that continue.
Where they don't put a pipe that's big enough to handle the water.
Because it's almost like you've seen this happen or something. But
Felt that happen.
So I seen it on TV.
saw it on YouTube.
Am I right? Is that going to be proactive or only for new developments?
It's for new from this point forward. We can't retro back and undo what was done, but anything that's being done for the future, we'll move forward.
Well, here's a question for you. Do you have any enforcement to make people do the right thing?
It will be.
But they were supposed to do.
We're gonna hit the enforcement section in just a minute, it's in a different category, but, the enforcer is actually in the room right now. So. They're one of the enforcers, so, yes, Ashley's gonna be working aggressively on that. We've kind of shifted some of her responsibility to be primarily compliance for that office and then working with the marshal's office as well. So we have two marshals that are involved in that, is what does be any others on roads. Next up is the administration and enforcement. So
Well,
it's almost like y'all knew what was coming as we were going into this.
Right on cue.
Yeah.
All right, this is each chapter that we've got, that at least that we've amended, has its own enforcement and administration article or division or sections. But it all stems from chapter 1, which was basically rewritten for adoption by the board back on May 5th. But we're coming back and we're doing it again. And the reason we did is because when we started going through and building up the chapters you've seen tonight, we started running across some concepts that we need to utilize here and a way to portray this that chapter 1 needs to mirror. Because again, chapter 1 is the base. So we went back and rebuilt the base bigger and better to accommodate the actual substantive chapters that deal with each part of this. So this is a good time to talk about enforcement. And that's mostly what I'm going to do here as opposed to the chapter itself. So this is a reconciliation after the original May 5th oath offer. And this basically violations of, to varying degrees, violations of the code are threats to public safety, health, and quality of life. They have to be taken seriously. So that's what we're going to do. And so what we have now is a group of 4 things that are articulated together as one. Any or all can apply. Administrative actions, penalties, other available actions like going to court and getting an injunction in Superior Court. We've done that once since I've been here. Basically cease and desist orders, revocations and refusals. I don't know, you all may remember this, 4 years ago. We shut down Whitestone Valley landfill for a long time. And rightly so, and we got everything worked out, we haven't had any troubles since. This just strengthens our ability to do that, provides more clarity, and it clarifies the fact that we can use any or all of these in any situation. And then the cost of being compliant. Whoever has to become compliant or stay compliant or has to basically accord to any provision here, they're going to have to bear the cost of it, and that's going to be clear. So it's these 4 things. Now, all violations, are all violations the same? Are they all bright red? No. There's a spectrum of violations, and we have to operate that way in terms of the way that we're trying to accomplish the board's objectives and then keep you all safe and high quality of life. And this basically, these violations run from what's in the near white to what's in the bright red. And the spectrum of violations, you basically have flagrant at the very end. We have those. You have serious just to the left of that. We have those. Because of our resources, we're in a complaint-driven mode, but we react as fast as we possibly can. Now, if we basically are out and see something that is flagrant, we'll take action on it. But by and large, we're complaint-driven, and we are basically responding to things that you all bring to our attention. Now, for the space on this spectrum that is not serious, not flagrant, we're basically going to use a schedule of fines. There'll be a progressive schedule of fines for violation until someone becomes a serious violation, and then they'll go into the serious or flagrant category then. But that's the way that the lesser items are going to be handled. However, when it's flagrant, especially when it's flagrant, with serious as well, then we're going to bring all this stuff to bear in terms of doing what we have to do to make this stuff work. We're much, as staff, we're much better enabled if this is passed, to basically do things very specifically and be able to go into, when we have to, magistrate's court to prosecute these violations and get much quicker dispositions on them and have things. You stick, our penalties up to $1,000 a violation, that can be a daily thing, or $2,500 for soil erosion. Those are state limitations. We're not in this to make $1,000. We're in this to stop things from happening and to create a deterrence for other people doing this, and that's the way that we're going to operate. Same goes if Chris has to basically okay something going to the Superior Court with a motion for an injunction. Same thing. We will respond. We'll respond quickly. We'll respond when there is a flagrant or serious situation, for sure, with the right kind of solution within that box.
Comments related to the enforcement center. Do it. Why you sat down so fast? We got one more section to go here, and that's our administration.
Yes. Can I do this in 45 seconds or less? This is about the planning commission. The planning commission was basically addressed in this chapter, 2, Article 3, Division 10. That was in 1999 when it was adopted. It has not been amended since 1999. The 2 chapters where the planning commission acted, Chapter 66, Article 3 was regarding cell towers. Chapter 67, which we went through on land uses. 67 was enacted in 05. 2010 is when 66 of Article 3 was enacted. So we're just basically updating this to make it to comport with current day as opposed to whatever it was supposed to be in 1999.
So as we open that one up for public comment, it's essentially on the appointment of the planning commission is to follow what we're currently doing, is just put the ordinance with it and the way that they hear the cases and some recommendations over to this board with the procedure. As the comments relate to the planning commission section of the administration. Any board comments related to any? I know that you guys have been working back and forth with staff directly and have been meeting them on going through the updates as this has been going. This process started
The day after I was elected.
3 years ago. And so there's been planning and development that's working directly with each commissioner on a regular basis to try to go through each individual item and trying to tackle the substantive stuff that we can try to get in place. And we now have it at a product to present. So
it's like fantastic work. There's lots and lots of hours to build and the whole team out there. Y'all are phenomenal.
Yes.
Thank you for all your effort.
Thank you so much for being all this done. I'm very excited.
None of it was Saban's idea.
I've seen the word of it.
It was Josh's.
Not a truck.
Thank you, Josh. Just Josh.
So with that, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All right, we'll close the public hearing and move on to, we've already handled our action items. We'll move straight into new business. First item under new business is consideration and approval of the 2025 voting delegate for the Legislative Leadership Conference coming up in October. Every county has to have a voting delegate from the Board of Commissioners. I think Commissioner Tippins and I will both be attending. You're not going to be attending this one, so you're not eligible to be a voting delegate. But do I have a motion?
Make a motion, Chairman Sainz. WW.
The motion has been made.
Do you want me to second or do you? I'll second.
I'm on the committee that has to come up with what we have to vote on, so I might as well go ahead and guess. All right, any discussion or question? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, maybe one question. Moving on to the next item. This is one we discussed in a work session in June, and that's the consideration and approval of a referendum election for package store sales of distilled spirits in unincorporated Pickens County during the general primary election on May the 19th, 2026. This is not a Board of Commissioners stance in favor or opposed to. It's simply to be able to put it out for the voters to have an option. We've had multiple individuals have approached us about consideration of trying to open up the store that allowed for the sale of distilled spirits. It has not been allowed within the counties. If passed, then this would then send over to the Board of Elections a resolution to call for a referendum election during the general primaries. It would not occur until the governor's general primary, so it would be a large election that draws the voter turnout from the county. But it gets it in the voters' hands as to whether or not the voters want to see this or not see it. I know that we had that discussion. This would be just simply to authorize that resolution to send it over to the Board of Elections for them to act on. So with that, do I have a motion and with board for or against?
Motion to approve.
Second motion.
Motion to second. Discussion or questions?
I just say, anytime we get the opportunity to put stuff in front of the people to vote for, I'm all about it. We don't want to make all those decisions for you. So, please go vote.
All right. With that, all in favor? Opposed? This one carries. I need it also has a place for all three of us since it's going from us to the Board of Elections. So pass that and go with you guys. The next item is something that's not uncommon to receive an annexation request. Anytime an applicant goes to one of the municipalities and applies to be annexed into them, they send over a notice to whether or not there's intent to oppose that annexation or not. This one's a little bit more complex. It's pending annexation request from the city of Jasper. It's on a 48.65 acre parcel located at 773 Fairview Road. It's parcel 065065, and just because Bill's already spoke to us quite a bit tonight, I'm gonna let Bill kind of do an update as to what that request involves or exactly what the process looks like if there's opposition or not opposition. I will kind of give just a brief recap of how it was submitted to us. The request is for a developer interested in building a 220 unit residential community at the location there, the 48 acre tract on Fairview Road. Fairview Road is a small dirt road that connects 515 to Lower Dowda Mill Road, which is also a pretty busy intersection just off of 515. They've sent that over. They've also sent the process. I know Bill's going to kind of give us a presentation to describe what they've requested, what the steps are in terms of what we have as the ability as the Board of Commissioners in this process. So I'm going to let Bill take the floor one more time for a short presentation on this so we can make our determination.
So, interesting coincidence that we have this, you have this after our prior hour, whatever we had. And so Chris set this up what it is. This is contingent on action by the Jasper City Council. So they basically have to do their thing in order for this to come into being and to get started. The board is in a position to either object or decline to object. You all. Chris said this is 48.65 acres. Our existing land use district that this sits in is agriculture. This is a 220 unit residential community for the developer's plan. Chris mentioned that. You all have 11 by 17s up there. You all can see where this is. You know where it is. And so this is basically the first overhead.
Just south of the racetrack gas station for the public that doesn't know exactly where that fair
Is it across for Worley Cross?
just across the street from where that's at. You can see that on that map.
That help.
Okay, all right, so that's the aerial view, so now you know for sure where it is now. All right, so you can basically see, the zoning around this. It's ag, you can see that turquoise colored parcel. You can see the rural residential behind it. You can see Worley Crossroads across the creek. All right, that is the developer schedule. You can see all those little brown things in there, those are the units. Okay, these are the words of the developer. The adjacent commercial properties support our proposal as high-density residential zoning will naturally complement existing uses. Key term there, high density. Developer also says, our ongoing plans include the provision of necessary water, sewer, and stormwater improvements to adequately accommodate urbanization. Key word there is urbanization.
Don't know it.
Our proposal aligns well with Jasper's future land use map.
No,
All right, 220 homes. Right now, under our density requirements, the 48.65 acres would accommodate 4 structures. If it went to small ag, it would accommodate 9 structures. If it went to estate residential, it would accommodate 16 structures. If it went to rural residential, it would accommodate 32 structures. There's nothing available in the county, if this is passed tonight later, that would allow anything beyond 32 structures here. Okay, so are you going to object or decline to object? That's your, that's what you'll be doing. Now, here's the troubling news. If you decline to object by state law, there's a 1-year freeze on Jasper's zoning of this. If they choose to do this, there's a 1-year freeze on that. So there'll be a year kind of period in there. If you object, this goes to arbitration. Losing in arbitration means you get your 1-year freeze. Winning in arbitration means maybe you get a 2-year freeze with some restrictions. The General Assembly, Georgia legislature, is very, very, very pro-municipality when it comes to the growth of incorporated areas versus unincorporated areas. I mean, it is this skewed. It really is. What you're seeing is real. That's basically it. So the objection or not objecting is your choice, but the objecting sends a message too, because you're seeing 2 distinct approaches here. What you all listened to in the last however long we talked, and this. Now, there's a planning commission meeting, City of Jasper, on August the 26th at 6 p.m. Then the city council will take this up on September the 8th, and there's the sign and there's the address in case anybody wants to go and doesn't miss the building. So
what we have before us, as I said at the beginning, and I want to make sure to reiterate this, it's required whenever the city of Jasper receives an application like this to send. Them sending us this letter that states whether you oppose or don't oppose does not indicate that they're considering one way or the other. It just tells us that they are following the steps of what has to be done. There's a formal process. There's a letter that's from the Department of Community Affairs that specifically has to be filled out as the reasons for objection. Obviously, as I pointed out, it's on Fairview Road, adjacent to Lower Downer Road, sitting right off of the most dangerous section of Highway 15 that exists in the county. It's already one of the most heavily congested and the most accidents, the most serious accidents that we have on a regular basis. I want to make sure I point out, them sending this to us does not mean that they've acted or they took any kind of action. They still haven't even had their public hearing. That's why we've posted the dates. It's not, it's to show that these are still steps that they have to get through. But one of those steps is to give the Board of Commissioners an opportunity to say whether they object or they do not object. The Department of Community Affairs has a pretty specific realm of what reasons you can have for objection. Density is one of those reasons. That the impact of the density, the roads and the infrastructure are another one of those reasons that are included as well. I typically do not do this, but instead of calling for a motion, I would prefer just to go ahead and make a motion that we send the message of objection, and that I'm asking for authorization from me as chairman to submit the letter that would be required, indicating to the city of Jasper that we strongly object to this being allowed in the most dangerous intersection in our community. Do I have a second?
I second your objection, sir.
First and a second. Now I'm going to open it up for comments, which I know you've been dying to make. So, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll just carry what you said. The roads it's on at the intersection of that, I don't understand. And like you say, the city hasn't said they're doing it, but
Yeah.
whoever thinks this is a good idea, it's the horrible idea. It's the worst place you can put this down. So, I agree.
Any other? So we'll get public comments at the end. This is a vote for the board at this point. Y'all said the comments. With no other comments, all in favor of submitting your objection? I can't vote because y'all did, but I would.
Then we vote now, Seacon.
So. That motion carries. We will get the paperwork to submit that over. I jokingly told him as we were walking in that I didn't send this to him in advance because I wanted his natural raw reaction whenever it came out. So, next item under new business is the consideration and approval of the ordinance amendments. I know that like I said, you've all had a chance to review those. The public hearing was held at the beginning portion of this meeting. I will go through these one at a time so that we can go through, as they are ordinances, each one, if approved, will require each of us to sign. The first one is Chapter 21, that's on the Fire Prevention and Protection Ordinance. Do I have a motion for the approval of the new ordinance on fire prevention and protection?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? With none, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carries.
We got to do this again.
We got to do it on each one, if we vote on each one. The next one is on Chapter 67, that's the Land Use Intensity Districts and Map. I would like to open up the floor for a motion on the approval of the updates to ordinance of Chapter 67.
Motion to approve.
Second motion.
Motion and a second, any discussion? And all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. The third ordinance for consideration for revision is Chapter 38 on land development standards. And with that, do I have a motion for approval?
Public. Motion to approve.
I second.
Move in a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The Chapter 54 section on roads and bridges. Do I have a motion to approve the amendments to the ordinance on Chapter 54 roads and bridges?
Motion to approve.
Second motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. And Chapter 1 is on general provisions, administration, and enforcement. The amendments are on the enforcement category within Chapter 1. Do I have a motion to approve Chapter 1?
Motion to approve.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. And the last one is Chapter 2, administration. It was discussed just along with the others. Do I have a motion to approve the amendments to Chapter 2 on administration?
Motion to approve.
Second motion.
We're going to second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
And none opposed. Where did you actually say we said that?
Down.
No, it sounded different. I was like, aye. So as we're finishing the signature on these, what we will do, because Municode, which is the state required provider that updates ordinances online, typically has a delay in when they update them. So we will get these uploaded onto the front page of our website. You can see that we still have some from May that we updated. Some of those have been put into Municode, some of them they've not fully, so we've left them on our front page for right now so that people that want to see the full text and the revision and the strike-throughs and the additions will have access to it. As soon as Municode gets those updated, then we'll make sure we still have to get those over to them tomorrow, and we'll begin the process of trying to get it uploaded. It's just a slow process now. Since we already went through Section 9 earlier in the meeting with the amended agenda, it brings us to our public comments portion of the week. Yes, Mr. Dobbs.
Commissioners, I want to compliment you on your decision to oppose that annexation. One of the things that our office is having to deal with, we've got Dan Poole with the Progress here. He's the owner of property in the city of Jasper. He would love to market his property to a person that's not going to have an intense use of his property. But from what Mr. Poole has told me, along with many other property owners in the city of Jasper, they will not issue water meters or building permits to these owners. If they cannot handle a less intense use, and I'll let Mr. Poole expand on that, how in the world, forget the road situation, just how in the world could they consider even looking at something like this? Thank you for your concern on public safety. I didn't see anywhere on that developer's plan for the new flyover over the interstate or anything of that nature. Mr. Poole, would you like to comment on this?
Roy, I appreciate it, and you are correct in what you said. I think I might be further.
Report yourself in progress.
I can't wait to read that. Yes, ma'am.
So I would like to commend you all for objecting to that, because when he referred to the word urbanization, why do you live in Pickens County? Do you live in Pickens County?
So we're assuming that the developer, most likely the developer is an out-of-town developer that's just pulled their comprehensive plan.
That's a bad word.
It's a commonly used.
Having lived in Cobb County, I'm fully aware of urbanization. But from the standpoint of a psychological standpoint, when you put that many houses together, that many people together, it mentally creates an environment for more crime, more violence and stuff, because you've got people lit on top of each other, like living like rats. It's just ridiculous. Why? You come north to get away from the rat race. So why would a developer even think this is a cool idea for here in this county?
I think, my opinion is they've consumed the resources in the counties below us, and they're just moving to the next county with resources to try.
I say, talk to the hand, just as you go.
But I
You have
really
a
hope
2,500 square
one
foot house for 900 grand.
day, Miss Dana, I hope one day you can find a way to step out of your shell and let us know. So, any other public comments?
I have a question. Forgive the dumb guy. Thank you all for your efforts on all of the ordinances. To quote a movie, it's a mess, and I appreciate it. Now that I think I heard that it's approved, when is it effective? I know that we can't search for, millions of years or whatever, but when do these go into effect?
As of
2 minutes ago?
It's not there, it's,
Okay,
about 3
all right.
minutes ago, so
That's good to know.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, they're meeting. Yes, sir.
Samuel Sly, I'm actually on the Jasper Planning Commission. I have not heard of this annexation. Since it's coming up next week, I suspect I'll be seeing that in the packet this weekend when I get it. But we have not heard anything.
And that's why I wanted to make sure to make the point that us receiving this letter just means the application was received. It does not mean the decision's been made or recommendations even been made to their council. This is just a first step that goes. And I can imagine that even in their office, they're understanding that they don't have the resources for this particular.
So what he's saying is we don't have to get the pitchforks and.
The intent wasn't that, it was just to say, here's the process according to the letter. They gave us the schedule of when they intend for it to go before the planning commission and the city council. So we want to make sure to put that out there. Yes, sir.
Commissioners, I'd like to thank y'all for, county administration for thanking y'all for beefing up a lot of concerns that we've expressed to y'all over the last 8 or 9 months. Thank you. I hope that because one of the basic tenets of government is to protect the rights of its citizens. And like I've told you before, and I'll say it here publicly, everybody's rights have been protected except ours. Because we can't access our property.
Right.
Thank goodness we have a good neighbor that's allowing us to use the driveway, but we can't access our property, one side of our property. So yeah, I hope there's some provisions in there that will, because of past sins of, and I'm not naming names or whatever, that the codes were not enforced. Actions were allowed to take place that should have happened. There should be some provisions somehow or another that you can help those of us that have been damaged.
Yes.
Again, because our rights have not been protected, we've had to spend thousands of dollars
She's legal.
in legal fees and cleaning up the mess ourselves just so we can access, and we still can't access the property.
And we can't make plans to access
Yes.
because we don't know what they're going to do next on their private property.
And also getting back to the annexation, just so that you know, there's a trout stream near that property there.
And we discussed that May of last year in one of the meetings.
Needs to be
I see
considered.
that creek in the map as well.
Yes, it's a protected structure. It needs to be protected.
I'm an environmentalist, so I'm with you on that one.
So yeah, I hope there's some provisions in there that can help protect citizens, and help out citizens that have been damaged by actions.
Leave them over there.
It becomes very challenging on the past, but it's something that we're trying to proactively continue to research, and we're trying to figure out ways.
And I don't mean to sound disrespectful, that's our problem, not y'all's opinions.
It's our problem.
We keep getting damaged, and we get no help from
There's
nobody.
no recourse from anybody. That includes EPD, that includes the soil guy. We've pressed all the buttons. We've called the state. Called our state representative.
We've sent the team out, and we've called the EPD out, and we've went back and forth with the state laws, and then we've researched each one on the ordinances, and we can enforce what we have in ordinance. We can't enforce what's not in ordinance. This point forward, we've got more teeth with the ordinances for enforcement. It's when you say that the past sins, it's difficult to challenge what's happened historically.
Well, I mean, y'all seen the picture. We got pictures of a few years ago versus now, and we can't access
Our
property.
property taxes will still go up.
But again, I thank y'all for doing that.
Not as much, though.
I thank y'all for doing
I'm dodging the bullets.
actions, to help maybe protect in the future.
Yes,
Thank you.
and protect others. Yeah.
Any other? With no other public comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Let's all favor.
And they